it's over 98% less hazardous than 99.99%. It's all in that range. They've helped several million smokers quit, and several more millions sharply reduce their cigarette consumption, and they're consumed almost exclusively, about 99%, by cigarette smokers and by former smokers who switched to these products to quit. Public health benefits every time a smoker uses an e-cigarette instead of smoking. E-cigarettes have already replaced 1 billion packs of cigarettes in the United States in the past 5 years, and last year, U.S. cigarette consumption plummeted by 4.6% as e-cigarette sales skyrocketed. E-cigarettes are more effective for smoking cessation than FDA-approved gums, lozenges, patches, and inhalers, which have a 95% failure rate. They only help 1 out of 20 people who use them quit smoking. The other 19 go back to cigarettes. An e-cigarette poses fewer risks than FDA-approved Chantix, as Pfizer is facing hundreds of lawsuits for causing depression, suicides, and suicidal thoughts among their consumers. E-cigarettes pose no risk to non-users. Hundreds of common workplace and household products and activities emit far greater levels of indoor air pollution than e-cigarettes, including furniture, carpet, paint, printers, copiers, cooking, cleaning products, dry cleaning clothes, hairspray, perfume, nail polish, and even a cup of coffee. But we don't ban any of those things. Meanwhile, e-cigarettes have never been found to create daily dependence in any non-smoker anywhere in the world. And I challenge anybody to find one kid who became addicted to nicotine because of e-cigarettes. And they've never found to precede cigarettes used in any daily smoker. Although a CDC survey found that e-cigarette use doubled on teens from 2011 to 2012, smokers accounted for the overwhelming majority of these e-cigarette users. Among high school students, 7.6% of smokers and 0.4% of non-smokers reported past 30-day e-cigarette use in 2011, and that doubled for the next year to 15.7% of smokers and 0.7% of non-smokers. So less than 1 out of 100 non-smoking youth have ever tried e-cigarette. Since CDC surveys found that teen smokers are at least 20 times more likely than non-smokers to report use of e-cigarette, and found that teen smoking has declined every year since e-cigarettes have been marketed, e-cigarettes are a gateway away from, not towards, cigarette smoking for teens, just as they are for adults. Regardless, just as we don't ban adults from consuming alcohol, smokes, tobacco, coffee, or candy because some teens consume these products, it's absurd to ban e-cigarettes for that reason. E-cigarettes benefit many employers and management since workers don't waste company time on smoke breaks and customers don't disrupt businesses by going outside. Some employers actively encourage smokers to switch to e-cigarettes to improve employee health and save money, including healthcare costs. Besides, it's impossible to enforce vaping bans, and it's unfair to impose $300 fines on employers and businesses for violations, since e-cigarette users can eliminate all visible vapor by simply holding their breath for 2 seconds. Watch closely. I want all of you to see if you can tell if I'm using this e-cigarette or not. Nobody can tell. It's impossible to enforce. If you want to impose a $300 fine on any management for not being able to tell if I'm using an e-cigarette or not, that is absurd. Since 2009, Smoke Free Pennsylvania has also advocated state laws banning the sale of e-cigarettes to minors, which 27 states have already enacted, and many more are in the process of enacting, including 4 laws passed in the past 2 weeks that have been sent to their governors. I just sent you last night, all of you, a copy of the most recent update of state and local legislation. It's about 13 pages long. Regarding the other bills, Bill number 96, we oppose the text of it because it appears to be preempted by the state law banning tobacco sales to minors, because it falsely defines smoke-free e-cigarettes as electronic smoking devices and creates a new derogatory category of unapproved nicotine delivery products to confuse and scare people. And because it requires all e-cigarette retailers to post enormous signs claiming that these are smoking devices when they're not. I urge this committee to amend Bill number 96 to make it consistent with the language, requirements, and penalties in Senator Tim Soliday's bill, which is Senate Bill 1055. I sent a copy to you. We also urge the Philadelphia City Council to support Tim Soliday's bill, which would ban the sale of all alternative nicotine products to minors in the state of Pennsylvania. And it also preempts the city ordinance anyhow, so even if we pass this ordinance, if Soliday's bill gets passed by the General Assembly, then this bill would be preempted by state law, and we'd have to go back and revisit this. So we ask you to make these consistent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things. I mean, I don't want to go on forever, but just a couple things. first of all, Dr. Ecig, you somewhere in the comments you said about this bill, these two bills must be a result of a conservative element for the pharmaceutical society, people. Is that something like that?
Conservative movement within the tobacco control community, which basically is most of the people in the tobacco control community. And basically, on their belief, they do not consider the possibility that any non-pharmaceutical product would have a public health benefit. So they approach it from that point of view. There can only be harm, no benefit, and everything else follows suit. There is a small but rapidly growing component of the public health community. Myself, Mr. Gottschall, others you may hear of, public health professionals. Run that who, with independent review and no commitment or no support from the pharmaceutical industry, challenge that wisdom. As I noted, we have a problem. The numbers of smokers and numbers of deaths have not gone down in 10 years. We need something new. And this product offers a pathway by invoking legislation that makes people believe that these are as bad as cigarettes or as harmful. You are preventing that potential public health benefit. That is the public health case against these bills.
Okay, first of all, just, can I say this, laughingly, I don't think I've ever been involved with anything you call conservative. Usually I'll call it bleeding heart. So, for the record, but I guess, balances out something.
That's for all of us.
Yeah. You say that we're saying that it's the same as cigarettes. I don't think it's anywhere that says that as tobacco. And we're not banning it. We're regulating it. And right now there are no regulations. Am I correct to say there are no regulations on electronic cigarettes as we speak? Federal regulations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Your regulations are supposedly intended to protect the health of the public. The case that we're making is that there's a substantial amount of research that the prior speakers are either unfamiliar with or have chosen to ignore that address the very questions that you're talking about. Now, prohibition of sales of nicotine products to minors is a topic totally separate from banning e-cigarettes. That's another topic, and we fully support the banning of nicotine products to minors, but not with the wording of the bill in front of you.
Okay, and as far as the wording goes, and I don't want to get into a semantic argument, we can be here for a long time, but you said that it should be called smoking. Well, they're called electronic cigarettes. What do you do with cigarettes? You smoke, I guess some people do, but most people smoke them. And if you say, even what Mr. Gottschall just did, if you puff on something, you inhale it, and at some point or another, exhale it. I think if you went out on the street and described that action to a man or woman walking up the street and said, what did we just do? I think they said we were smoking.
Vaping.
So, I mean, why are we getting into this whole thing? It's
The reason we're
should this be regulated or not? But if we're going to get into, I think most people will call this smoking.
Yes, it should be regulated, but by presenting what e-cigarettes produce as smoke, you are distorting it. It is the toxins in the smoke that are not present in e-cigarette vapors that cause all of the potentially fatal illness. And also, it is those toxic substances that so magnify the effect of the nicotine that people get addicted to cigarettes. They don't get addicted to e-cigarettes. That's a huge difference.
Okay, and I respect your opinion, and you certainly have it. There obviously are many, many other people, and I read the list, besides the witnesses today, the list of people, and I would certainly call them medical professionals who feel differently. Now, I don't know, maybe you'd say they're all in the pockets of the pharmaceutical society, I doubt that, but in any event, I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
I would like to respond. Water vapor is not smoke. And the people who are pushing this bill are trying to convince people that water vapor is smoke. I drove from Pittsburgh today. It was below zero when I left. I was emitting water vapor the whole time I breathed, but I wasn't smoking.
Were you puffing on something and inhaling it and exhaling it?
It has nothing to do with it. Smoke is smoke.
You say it has nothing to do with it. I say it does.
Confuse everybody into believing that water vapor is smoke, and that's wrong. And water vapor doesn't harm people. It's not they sit in entertainment, their rock concerts, I'm sure you've been there, nightclubs, except that it's about 1 million times greater concentrations of vapor than are emitted by e-cigarettes. It's just a tiny part, micrograms. It's barely detectable in microscopes, and they're trying to make it sound like it's as hazardous as smoke. Smoking kills people. Inhaling vapor doesn't.
We're not saying it's as hazardous. We're saying that there have been serious health professionals who have raised questions about it. And what we're saying is that until at least we get those questions answered by a neutral organization like the FDA or something like that, Did I interrupt you? Then don't interrupt me, please. You don't interrupt me. Thank you. Now, when all we're saying is that we put regulations on it. The word ban kept being used. We are not banning it. You can step outside. You can use it in your own home. You can sit in Love Park today if this bill was passed and use it. We are not banning it. So as long as we're playing semantics, gentlemen, I think we ought to make it clear that this is not a ban. It is a regulation of something that is, as we sit here today, it's not regulated. Now, we can disagree on how much of a danger it is, but I think we can have differences of opinion. But the fact of the matter is, we're not sure because we don't know all that's put into these devices. So
Yes,
I don't. Well, you think you do? I don't think we do.
People that say we don't know are the people that either refuse to read the research. There have been over 200 studies published in the last 5 years on these products. I've sent them to most of these people. The Philadelphia Health Department's received copies of most of those. They refuse to read them. Instead, they come out and say, we don't know anything. There's no science. And the FDA called it regulation in 2009 when they banned e-cigarettes. It's called code word for prohibition. Let's call it regulation. It sounds nice. They see 2,000 shipments at customs agents at U.S. ports, and that's what caused the two e-cigarette companies to sue FDA and put it in federal court. I mean, you want to play games with words. Let's be honest.
I don't want to play games. I'm saying it directly what it is. I'm not playing games at all. I'm saying directly what I feel is.
Every workplace in this city is effectively a ban, except if you go outside. So, I mean, why don't you ban coffee? It's got carcinogens in it, toxic chemicals.
I don't see anybody put it out there.
This carpet emits far more carcinogens than all the e-cigarettes combined in this country ever.
Is anybody smoking the carpet?
No, they have carcinogens in it. You say you're worried about these unknown risks. Why? We know about the risk of a lot of these other products. And you're not banning them, you're suddenly banning this, even though there's no evidence of disease or death that's caused by this product.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What's the number that's at? Senate Bill 1055, Tim Soloway, it's a Democrat.
Good, I got two. It's a good friend of mine. I'm going to take you up on your invitation. I think
Good,
we're
thank
going to
you.
all of it. And I'm going to have a conversation with him. And if I can persuade him to amend the bill, perhaps I'll persuade some of his colleagues to have some creative amendments either in committee or on the floor.
You're on Soloway to amend his bill with all these smoking devices?
I used to do that. I used to do the amendatory process very well in Harrisburg, and I might take you up on that offer.
I'm saying you should support
Looking
Soloway's
into
bill.
I understand, but as you said,
Hawks.
please don't be quick. Mr. or Doctor, can I ask you a question? I'm speculating that you were way ahead of the curve in 2007 doing research. And just for a point of clarity, were you doing research in other countries on e-cigarettes? Or were you doing research in the United States for e-cigarettes that were in other countries? Because I understand e-cigarettes were not introduced in the United States until 2010. So can you please tell me? Let me
Where was I really wise?
2006.
I would welcome some current research to persuade me of information that I have.
February 2007 is the date the FDA law was introduced into Congress.
Am I correct that the e-cigarettes were not introduced until 2010? So I'm just wondering.
E-cigarettes were introduced in 2006 in the United States, and FDA seized 1,000 shipments at U.S. ports in 2009 and 2010. So definitely, US ports, customs agents were seizing.
The research that we began in 2007 was on tobacco harm reduction in smokeless tobacco products. And then when e-cigarettes became more prominently available and visible, we added research on e-cigarettes to the work that we were doing. But the initial concept then, and the concept now, is one of tobacco harm reduction, enabling smokers who are unable or unwilling to quit to reduce their risk of potentially fatal illness by 98% or more by switching to a much lower risk product. Yeah, cessation is best, but it's not an option for many smokers. So that the research we were doing was tobacco harm reduction. And
I
as
thought you said it was e-cigarettes, and I thank you because I'm just affected as District Finley is on the Nebraska Pass of our original.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman.
I just have a clarifying question. This is a yes or no answer. Is your assessment the same for these hookah, what do you call them, the hookah?
this assessment is the same for all the electronic nicotine delivery systems, INS devices, which is the technically proper name for all of these.
Thank you. And I'll just note for the record, notwithstanding the state bans, many times legislation blows up and many times it blows down. We will abide by the law, and then sometimes we pass laws and we get sued, and we're okay with that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next panel. Gilbert Ross, Medical and Executive Director of the American Council of Science and Technology. Carl Phillips, Consumer Advocacy for Smoke-Free Alternative Association, and Jeffrey Damon Associates. Good afternoon. Would you state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
My name is Carl B. Phillips, PhD. I am a former professor of public health and am now the scientific director for Consumer Advocates for Smoke-Free Alternatives Association, or CASA, the leading advocacy group for the millions of smokers who have quit smoking thanks to the use of low-risk alternatives. I lived here up until fairly recently, although a few months ago I moved out of state. CASA supports the prohibition of sales to e-cigarettes to minors in principle, although there are some fatal flaws with the wording of the current bill that have been pointed out. These are contained in my written testimony and are easier to follow there, so I will not waste time repeating those. We support the principle of the bill. It can easily be amended to fix the wording problems. Dr. Igor Burston was hoping to be able to present here regarding the question of place bans on e-cigarette use. He is the world's leading expert on the health effects of the chemicals in e-cigarettes. He's a professor at Drexel University School of Public Health. Unfortunately, he was not able to be scheduled early enough and had to leave. To summarize what he would have been able to tell you in much greater detail, the environmental exposure from e-cigarettes is not at all similar to smoking. Professor Burston's recent review, which is a review of every available study about e-cigarettes, over 9,000 observations, including every single study that you've heard mentioned here today that suggested that there might be a risk, concluded that the exposure of chemicals to the user, both the intended ingredients and the contaminants, was far below the level that would create any health concern. That's to the user himself. The conclusion was that exposure to bystanders is 1,000 or 10,000 consider hazardous. The result is that this is thousands of times lower than the level that would be considered hazardous. And as has already been noted by other witnesses, is far less than the exposure that you get from restaurant kitchens or furniture, someone peeling an orange, or simply a room full of people breathing, none of which I suspect you're planning on banning. And banning is a key word here. You have our written testimony from my organization, so I'd like to note that we've heard a remarkable number of claims from witnesses in support of this place ban, protesting frequently, oh, this isn't a ban. And yet, if you look at most of what they said, it had nothing to do with any issues about exposures to bystanders. It was all about reasons why those witnesses would like to ban e-cigarettes entirely. In addition, hundreds of statements that were made, literally over 100 statements there, were simply false. I could spend till midnight carefully debunking a lot of the scientific nonsense that you've heard here today, but I realize I'm not going to get an opportunity to do that. But set that aside, even if you believe most of what was said, most of them were attacks on the existence of e-cigarettes, not on allowing these products to be used because they are a public health miracle for smokers to quit smoking, but just we don't want other people exposed to them. The testimony had almost nothing at all to do with that. Vaping is about 99% less harmful than smoking, and hundreds of thousands of American smokers who would not have otherwise quit have switched to e-cigarettes, thus reducing their health risks almost as much as if they had quit cold turkey. Anything that discourages this switching is bad for public health. Now, you might be inclined to say, well, despite Igor Burston's definitive study, better safe than sorry. But this is not safe. This is very costly. Being able to use an e-cigarette in a bar or one's office, rather than having to trudge outside to smoke, is a big draw. People come for the convenience, but they stay for the 99% reduction in health risk. Take away that convenience, and you're going to be responsible for killing many people who would have quit smoking as a result of that, but instead figure that they might as well just keep smoking. This is hardly erring on the side of caution. The rest of my written testimony is on record. I just have to pause here and say that I think this is really sad. There was the remark about liberals and conservatives before. I'm about the strongest progressive liberal on most issues that you ever might want to find. And yet I'm one of the many people who has come to distrust and even hate government over actions like this. Basically, the argument was, we ban smoking, so yeah, let's go ahead and ban this too. But where does that leave us? This is Philadelphia. This isn't New York. This is Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty, the home of the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall. These get called public place bans, but this is not a public place ban for the most part. This would impose restrictions on 1 million private office managers, restaurateurs, and bar owners to not allow them to make the decision. You heard the testimony about various private actors who decided on their own to not allow vaping on their private property. That's fine. That's their choice. But for the government to step in and override the judgment of a bar owner who thinks that it is perfectly acceptable to allow this, as far as we can tell, harmless activity to take place in their own space is a huge government overreach and the worst of the slippery slope arguments that you hear and that cause so many people to lose their faith in government. So you're taking an action that dramatically restricts private choice based on misinformation when the correct information shows that there's no genuine risk here. I'm speaking for myself right now, not my organization, where I have to say that this is just a very sad thing
You have our printed position statement as well, I believe. ACTIA, which is our acronym, was founded in 1978, and we've been in the forefront of anti-smoking advocacy since then. We hate smoking. We love smokers, but we hate smoking. A few years ago, we became convinced, based upon evidence, that the best way out of smoking was with tobacco harm reduction, supplying the nicotine addicts from cigarette smoke with the nicotine that they crave, but removing the carcinogens and toxins that are plentiful in cigarette smoke. But what people have been talking about here, all of those folks who testified in favor of these bills, kept repeating over and over again about the evils of smoking and how the tobacco companies and the cigarette makers deceived and manipulated ads and seduced kids into smoking and all of that. Well, yes, perhaps. I mean, that's certainly true. But e-cigarettes, the theme here seems to be conflating e-cigarettes with real cigarettes. They are not at all similar. Some of them look like cigarettes, and I think that generates the fear and loathing based upon the big tobacco tactics of the 20th century. But e-cigarettes are not cigarettes. There is no tobacco in e-cigarettes. There is no smoke associated with e-cigarettes, so to call them smoking devices is ridiculous. There's no combustion. The dangers of cigarette smoking, everybody here will agree, comes from the tar and gaseous phase that smokers inhale hundreds of times a day for hundreds of months and years, and that's what kills them. Smokers smoke for the nicotine, but they die from the smoke. So banning, restricting, and otherwise removing access from smokers to e-cigarettes, which seems to be a public health miracle based upon the information we have, is the opposite of public health. Nobody here has bothered to mention yet this following fact. We have 44 million approximate smokers in this country. 2/3 of whom at least are daily smokers, meaning they're addicted. 480,000 actually was the last CDC estimate of the number of Americans who die each year from cigarette smoke. 0 is the estimate of the number of people who have been sickened or killed by e-cigarettes. And yet, you say we don't know what's in them. As Carl Phillips just testified, Igor Bertin is one of the world's experts on this subject, and it's a shame that the hearing was delayed sufficiently long such that he was unable to testify. But the vapor that the e-cigarette users inhale has no threat to health, much less the threat from so-called secondhand vapor, which is a term that it's just nonsensical in terms of medical risk. People who say we need to regulate e-cigarettes, if they're not regulated, want basically to regulate them off the market. Again, as Carl said, it's really, in effect, a hatred of these devices because they remind people of cigarettes. They want to regulate them right off the market. We believe that regulation of e-cigarettes is a good thing in terms of age limits on marketing and sales, making sure that they're manufactured appropriately, responsibly, that child-proof packaging and accurate labeling are all appropriate regulation. Also, people have said that there's no federal regulation. Well, the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act of 2009 is in effect a regulation to this extent. It's been also implied that e-cigarette companies are trying to kid the public that they're not really a smoking cessation device, that there's some other ulterior goal. E-cigarette companies are not permitted by that law to tell anybody that they can be used to stop smoking. It would be a violation of the law. So they have to go around the bend to try to imply that it might be healthier for you to use e-cigarettes than to smoke, which is obviously true, but they're not allowed to say that. It would be a violation of the law. We know for this for a fact. You say that there's no hard evidence that e-cigarettes lead to smoking cessation. We do know that millions and millions of units of these devices have been sold over the last couple of years, and sales seem to be doubling each year. At the same time, sales of cigarettes have declined by historic levels. Between 4 and 5% fewer cigarettes were sold last year than the year before. Also, there's some fear about teens being addicted to nicotine thinking of becoming a cigarette smokers thanks to e-cigarettes and this ridiculous CDC report that was manipulated to scare people that e-cigarette use had been doubling among teens. Well, you heard the data from Mr. Gottschall about how phony those data were. In fact, teen smoking has declined significantly over the last couple of years, which flies in the face of the theory that e-cigarette use has anything to do with increasing the risk of teen smoking. That's another false alarm, red herring. Basically, e-cigarettes, the vapor is steam, as Mr. Gottschall said, there's some discussion about that. It contains nicotine and propylene glycol, or vegetable glycerin, and trace amounts of other chemicals. There's nothing in it that could harm anybody. I've asked you, before you pass this bill, which is misguided, to think about the 480,000 Americans who die every year from cigarettes. E-cigarettes seem to be a way out of smoking, and to restrict them or reduce access to them